You think Inside Out is just a colorful Pixar movie about a little girl learning to navigate her emotions, but it's not. It's actually a devastating psychological documentary about the exact moment you executed your own childhood innocence. And the character who suffers the most brutal, unacknowledged casualty isn't Riley, it's Bing Bong. And to understand what actually happens in the memory dump, we have to look at who Bing Bong was before the world forced him into hiding. Now we all know him as a goofy pink cotton candy elephant who cries candy tears. He is a part cat, part elephant, part dolphin, and entirely ridiculous.
You gotta remember, when Riley was 3, animals were all the rage. The cow goes moo.
Riley created him when she was 3 years old, back when she still believed in impossible things, and they played together constantly. But when Riley turned 4, the real world started creeping in, and by the time the movie takes place, Bing Bong has been put out of work for years. He wanders aimlessly through the long-term memory. He is desperate not to be forgotten. Now it's easy to look at him and just see a classic children's movie trope, the imaginary friend who provides some comic relief and helps the heroes on their quest. But Pete Docter, the director of the film, didn't design him to be a punchline. Docter conceived this film in October of 2009 after watching his own daughter, Ellie, go through a massive personality shift. She had been an outgoing, goofy child who would introduce herself to strangers without fear. But when Ellie turned 11, everything changed.
Started, and as a little kid she was like, you know, the way little kids are, goofy, funny, full of energy. And then she turned 11, and then she was a little bit more like, you know, a little more quiet. And as a parent, I was really like, oh no, I don't get to play dolls on the floor anymore, you know, that kind of sucks.
Docter observed that her childhood joy took a vacation. She became quiet and withdrawn. He realized that the innocent bubble of childhood bursts, and you are thrust into an adult world where you are judged and expected to behave in a certain way. Docter explicitly stated that Bing Bong represents the spirit of childhood. He is the physical embodiment of that innocent bubble. But there's a problem. Society doesn't just ask you to outgrow your childhood, it demands that you systemically dismantle it. And this is where Bing Bong stops being a cartoon and starts reflecting a brutal psychological reality. But here's the thing, Bing Bong isn't just an imaginary friend. He's literally constructed from the pieces of Riley's identity that she's being forced to abandon. Now look at the flower petals on his jacket. Each petal represents one of her core emotions. Red for anger, yellow for joy, blue for sadness. But there is also an orange petal, an emotion that was cancelled and never made it to headquarters. Bing Bong literally carries the abandoned, unoptimized parts of Riley's psyche right on his chest. And he gathers her joyful, fading memories in a limitless bag as he wanders through the archives of her mind. He is the keeper of everything she used to be before she knew what she was supposed to be. And there's a scene where he leads joy and sadness to a dark room, claiming that a sign reading DANGER means
Quickest way to
shortcut.
headquarters. No, but Joy, this is abstract thought.
What are you talking about? I go in here all the time. It's a shortcut, you see? DANGER, shortcut. I'll prove it to you. Look at me. I'm closer to the station because I'm taking the shortcut.
He can't read the word danger, and that's not just a joke about him being illiterate. He can't read the word danger because Riley created him before she knew what danger meant. He was literally forged in the age of pure faith, before the world taught her to be afraid, before the embarrassment became more powerful than wonder. But it gets worse. When Bing Bong tries to force his way back into Riley's conscious life by waking her up in a dream, the mind guards arrest him. They lock him in a subconscious. This functions as a massive, glaring metaphor. The child self cannot be recalled by force, and every adult who has ever tried to get back to who they used to be through sheer will has experienced this exact phenomenon. You cannot break back into yourself because your own mind will stop you. And look at how the different emotions treat him. When Bing Bong loses his wagon and falls into the profound despair, Joy tries to minimize it. She tries to distract him with toxic positivity, but sadness sits next to him and simply acknowledges his grief.
I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah, it's sad.
This is the entire thesis of the film, applied in miniature. We cannot bypass the grief of growing up, we can only move through it. The distraction of the imagination land in the film isn't a failure, it's a scheduled demolition. And it's because growing up isn't just a tragedy that happens to you. It's a renovation that the mind performs on itself. So let's look at the facts. Having an imaginary friend isn't just a quirky phase, because according to the cross-cultural studies in Europe and the US, between 20 and 65% of children create imaginary companions. In the preschool period, this is associated with advanced narrative skills and high emotional intelligence. Psychologists call these imaginary parallel worlds paracosms. They are highly structured, deeply complex environments that foster creativity. But as we enter adolescence, a massive cognitive shift occurs. In the 1960s, psychologist Erik Erikson coined the term identity crisis. It describes the developmental stage where adolescents must repudiate the routines of childhood and redefine themselves based on societal values. Because early in adolescence, the children shift from defining themselves by physical traits to defining themselves by their thoughts and opinions. And if they fail to do this, they experience what Erikson calls identity diffusion. And the diffusion is the exact word used to describe what happens to Bing Bong when he fades away. So in human terms, it's the moment you realize other people are judging you. You stop defining yourself by what you love and start defining yourself by what is acceptable. To survive adolescence, you have to rewrite your own life story. And in that rewrite, the imaginary friend doesn't just disappear because the child wants it to. It disappears because society implicitly tells the child it has to. And this brings us to the devastating financial reality of the Inside Out franchise. Because when Inside Out 2 hit theaters in 2024, it didn't just do well. It grossed $1.68 billion worldwide. It became the fastest animated film in history to cross that $1 billion mark, doing it in just 19 days. And let me say that again, $1 billion in 19 days. But look at who bought those tickets. Nearly 40% of the audience were adults between the ages of 18 and 34 who showed up without kids. So why are millions of adults flocking to a cartoon about a teenager's brain? Because of the psychological phenomenon called the reminiscence bump. Now studies show that adults retain an abnormally high number of vivid autobiographical memories from early adolescence. Now this is the exact period when our own internal architecture was being demolished and rebuilt. We are drawn to this movie because it triggers profound nostalgia. But nostalgia isn't just warm and fuzzy, because the word literally originates from the Greek words nostos, meaning return, and algos, meaning pain. It is the painful longing for a severed past. Nostalgia is triggered by music, objects, and smells from our youth, which is exactly why Bing Bong's rocket runs on song power. Now the very trigger for nostalgia is what powers his entire existence.
Ah, we did it! Bing Bong? Bing Bong!
You made it! Go save Riley!
When adults watch his film, they aren't experiencing joy, they're experiencing a socially acceptable form of grief. And Pixar knows exactly what they are doing to us. Now here's where the movie gets incredibly real. The scene in the memory dump. Bing Bong's precious wagon rocket is thrown into the abyss, and this rocket was his last link to Riley. It was built to take her to the moon, not to Mars, not to get a practical job, just to the moon. And it represents the kind of unlimited, impossible thinking that the childhood permits and adulthood quietly cancels. And when he and Joy fall into the dump, they are faced with permanent erasure. They try to use the rocket to fly out. They sing his magical song to power it, but Bing Bong realizes he's too heavy. He realizes that his existence is weighing Joy down, so he willingly tumbles off the back of the wagon. He sacrifices himself so that Joy can escape. And Pixar's message here is brutal and clear. In order to keep growing up, Riley will need Joy more than she will need an invisible friend. And Bing Bong is paying the ultimate price to save a girl who has all but forgotten he even exists. Now the original cut of the scene was actually 40 seconds longer. Richard Kind, the actor who voiced Bing Bong, explained that the original version showed Bing Bong getting increasingly desperate. It was so heart-wrenching that test audiences couldn't handle it. Pixar literally had to censor the grief because it was breaking people. And even in the final cut, Richard Kind was in tears while recording his final lines. And he said that the line that hits him right in the chest every single time is, "I've got a good feeling about this one." Bing Bong comforts Joy while he signs his own death warrant. But here's what is truly devastating about that comfort. There is no take back. Unlike Calvin and Hobbes, where Calvin gets to stay a child forever, sliding into eternity. And the single most terrifying aspect of his death is not that he dies, It's that Riley never knows he's gone. She doesn't get to grieve him. She doesn't get to hold a funeral for him. She just wakes up one day, slightly older, slightly more practical, and completely unaware of what it costs to get there. Think about growing up in that world. You wake up one day and you realize you are different. You stopped wanting to go to the moon. You learn to answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? With something realistic instead of something true. And you can't quite remember when the change happened. When adults sit in the dark theater and watch Bing Bong fade away, they aren't crying for Riley. They are crying for themselves. They are crying for the version of themselves they couldn't save. But his final words reframe the entire tragedy. He doesn't say, remember me. He doesn't say, come back for me. He looks at Joy and says, take her to the moon for me. He doesn't surrender the dream, he just passes it forward. And the tragedy isn't that you can't go to the moon. The tragedy is forgetting that you ever wanted to. Bing Bong didn't die so Riley could become boring. He died so she could survive. So the next time you have a chance to believe in something impossible, just try it.